So tonight we're at session 2 of the Foundations of Looking Good mini course. That's sort of the intro to everything that will go on in the Looking Good Together community. Last week we talked a lot about color, and it's been really fun seeing posts and hearing individually from so many of you about color ahas that you have had and about cleanouts that you've done in your closets and reorganizing and all of that. And as important as color is, and it really is the foundation of everything, it's not the whole story. And probably number 2 on the list for the majority of women is understanding what kinds of garment silhouettes are the most flattering for their particular body shape. Body type is the term that we most often use. And it's fascinating to read statistics in the image industry that say that as much as 80% of women miscalculate what their body type even is. So certainly it makes it a lot harder to dress a body that you don't understand. We obviously come in an unending assortment of shapes and sizes, and body type isn't the whole story. We have horizontal body types, which is what we'll be looking at today. We also have vertical body shapes, and we have a whole array of figure differences where one person might be busty and another one might be smaller chested, as just one example. But today we're focused on body types, which is about the silhouette or the outline of the shape of our body as we're facing forward. So the easiest way to assess that about yourself is to get into some sort of clothing that's pretty body conscious. It doesn't have to be a leotard, but workout clothes are one great option. Since we're going to just be doing this at home by ourselves, presumably, your good undies could work just fine also. And then you want to look at yourself in the mirror, or I always find it really super helpful to look at myself in the mirror and snap a selfie, because then that allows whatever I'm looking at, whether it's my body type or assessing an outfit, it allows me a little additional removal or distance or objectivity. So in whatever way you are able to be looking at an image of yourself, the first thing that you want to do in assessing your body type is to look at the width of your shoulders. You can sort of feel where there's that joint that moves at the shoulder, from that point down to your hips. And you want to say to yourself, is the width of my shoulders about the same as the width of my hips, or are my shoulders wider, or are my hips wider? Now, some people feel comfortable just observing that. Other people find it more helpful to take a yardstick and sometimes it's easier if you have a buddy to help you with this, but you can do it by yourself. But put the top edge of the yardstick right at the point of that hinge or that joint, in your shoulder, and let it fall against your hips, and ask yourself if it's going straight up and down, or if it's angling outward or angling inward. If, when you make that observation, whatever methodology you use, if your shoulders are noticeably narrower than your hips, you're done. That's all the assessing you have to do. You are what we call a triangle body type. Sometimes in other systems, they use the term pair. I personally like the term lower body dominant, but whatever terminology you want to use, this is you. On the other hand, if you have a really strong shoulder line and a narrower hip line, that's what we call an inverted triangle, an upside down triangle, if you will, or an upper body dominant silhouette. And with either of those, you don't need to do any more assessment. You're there. However, if your hips and shoulders are about the same, then you need to take another step. And first you want to ask, is your waist well defined? We used to say, or I used to say, is your waist noticeably smaller than your hips and shoulders? But there's more to it than just the circumference around your waist. What we mean by well defined is that there's an observable slope inward from your underarm down to your waist, and a roughly equivalent slope from your waist out toward the fullest part of your hips. So it's not, there are bodies that are straight and then they come in real abruptly at the waistline. That's not an hourglass, but for an hourglass, you want to see that inward slope through your rib cage and then back out to your hips. If you don't have that clearly defined waistline, or over here on the no, that's not me arc, then we have one more question. And that is to ask if you're mostly built just straight up and down, or if you have a really full bust or a lot of tummy, if you've accumulated extra fullness through the middle part of your body. And if you have that extra fullness through the middle, we're calling that an oval body shape. And if you don't, if you're just straight up and down, but not particularly that fullness, particularly through the front of your body, then we're calling that a rectangle. Immediately after this class, I will post this graphic in the main feed of the community so that you can refer back to it in assessing your own body shape. If you find that that's just confusing you, that's okay. You can snap a picture like the illustrations that I showed you in the first slide, and I won't ask you to post it for the group. I'll tell you that you can email it to me individually, and I will be happy to take a look at it and help you assess and be sure that you are indeed seeing yourself accurately in terms of body type. This evening, we'll talk about recommendations for all 5 types. And you probably have some idea of which one at least you think that you are at this point. But again, those recommendations will be posted in the groups for each different body type also. So,
Nancy,
yes.
question. I know for me, I'm more of a straight up and down, very little waist definition. When you talk about a full bust or tummy difference between the rectangle and the oval, you're also talking about looking at me straight on. From straight on, I look like a rectangle. If you look at me from the side, I got a belly and I got that full breast. So how do you define which of the two you go into?
So then you're probably going to be happier with the recommendations for an oval.
Okay.
And thanks
just
for
trying to understand the straight on
question.
versus side. It's different for me.
Well, and basically body types are straight on, but that center body fullness, whether it lands more side to side or more front to back, is still going to most likely make the oval style recommendations the most effective for you.
Okay, thank you.
So thanks for asking for that clarification. It also can be really helpful in determining your body type to think about the pattern in which you observe any extra pounds distributing themselves on your body. And if you've never gained any extra pounds, then this is going to be unhelpful for you. Don't complain about it out loud because it could do bad things for the harmony in the group. If you are that triangle body type, narrower shoulders, fuller hips, most likely when you gain weight, the first place it goes is to your hips. So that's pretty identifiable. If you are an inverted triangle, when you gain weight, the first place it goes is through the middle of your body, okay? None of us really gain weight in our shoulders anyway. And this body type doesn't tend to gain weight at all through the hips and thighs and legs. So any extra pounds tend to land in the middle. If you're a rectangle, same story. Generally, rectangles tend to gain when they tend to gain extra weight, also tends to land in the middle part of their body. And you can see that these two bodies, with the passage of time and a few extra pounds, that's where ovals come from. And obviously ovals also, when they gain weight, it tends to be through the middle part of their body. Hourglasses, when they gain weight, it tends to distribute very evenly from their shoulders to their toes. It goes everywhere. And people often will ask me, so which is the best body type? What's the ideal one? The truth of the matter is, the ideal one is the one that got you out of bed this morning and got you here tonight. all of them. Who is it? I want to say it was Gilda Radner, but I'm not sure that's right, who said that she was grateful for every part of her body that still worked. It was Nora Ephron. That's who it was. If you have never read her autobiography, oh my gosh, it is not to be missed. And that's just one little sample. So all the body types are fine. They all can look wonderful. They also all can look not so wonderful based on how well we do at choosing clothing that suits our particular body type. So here are some examples of some people from some of my classes. I've sort of masked out their faces because, here they are in the all together. It seemed like the thing to do. Illustrating the different body shapes. So here you're seeing a situation of definitely a little bit narrower through the shoulders, a little more fullness through the hips, but an inward curve at the waist, and that makes her a triangle. Here we're seeing plain as day, that wider shoulder down to a narrower hip. And do you see how her hips and her thighs just don't have any bulk to them at all? You also get the hint of a slightly prominent bust, and also a little bit higher bust, breasts that ride sort of higher on the rib cage. All of those are typical characteristics of an inverted triangle. Here we're seeing balanced shoulders and hips with some inward curve at the waist. That's going to give us an hourglass. Here we're seeing balanced shoulders and hips with a whole lot less inward curve at the waist. That's going to classify as a rectangle. And being a rectangle doesn't mean that you're perfectly square. We're not going for SpongeBob SquarePants here, but it's a whole lot less inward curve than you're seeing with an hourglass. And then here's our oval. Her hips and shoulders are balanced, but you're seeing that center body fullness. And some ovals will actually have, from a front view, a waist that's wider than hips and shoulders. And then here are those same women with my poor scribbly attempt at outlining their shapes so that you're seeing the curve in that triangle and that hourglass, the much straighter lines in the inverted triangle. And it's interesting, an inverted triangle really is, in a way, an hourglass top on a rectangular body. So do you see how there's some slope inward from her underarm to her waist, and then it comes down very straight. There's not much outward curve. Here's the inward curve in our hourglass. Here's the slight contour, but not nearly as much, that defines a rectangle. And there's that fullness that defines an oval. This is making me have flashbacks of the mystery green line that showed up in the three myths presentation. I did find out later how to prevent someone from randomly doing that. So let's talk a little bit about each of these body types. Hourglasses, you'll remember, are balanced shoulders and hips, a shaped waistline, average to full bust. That's not to say that there can never be a flat-chested hourglass. There can, but a more average bust size is more typical, and a rounded backside. If you look at an hourglass or a triangle from the side view, there's a lot of outward curve to their behind, at least in their younger years. Now, there is the passage of time and the pull of gravity, and we all tend to flatten out a little more, but more roundness, more fullness to their behind is characteristic of this body type as well. Now, for each of the body types, I've just chosen kind of at random one well-known celebrity who has that body type, because I think it's fun to see how even someone who makes their living looking fabulous, supposedly, can still not optimize their shape by the choices that they make. So this is Halle Berry, who's gorgeous as can be. There you see her perfect little hourglass figure. And you see how there in that straight low slung dress, her hourglass figure is totally obscured as it is here. So it's, again, you would look at that and go, meh. So if we look in our own mirror at our own hourglass figure and go, meh, it might just be a dress as non-optimal as that one, where something with more shape would showcase us in a much better way. The objectives for dressing an hourglass are to not do anything to mess up that shoulder and hip line balance, and to somehow define or at least allude to that curved waistline shape underneath. And most hourglasses, like most women of all body types, prefer styling details that elongate the silhouette just a little bit. So here are some examples of the kinds of garment details that would work well for an hourglass figure, whether we're talking about dressed up styles or workout clothes or anything in between. The basics are that clothing for an hourglass is most flattering if it has some sort of shaping to at least hint at that waistline curve. So princess seams, darts, dart tucks, this surplice wrap design, all of those are things. And again, this could be a dress, or it could be a top with that soft wrap worn over a pair of jeans, whatever. Narrow belts. Hourglasses generally look terrific wearing belted styles. The one exception for that is a full busted hourglass who has a very short torso. Don't ask me how I know about that. And here you can see that even in this workout outfit, it has shaped side seams, and then this sort of curved diagonal seam in the front gives an opportunity for shaping that garment in toward her waist to showcase her silhouette. Now, that's also not to say that you absolutely have to be in your most perfect thing for your body type when you go to the gym. Cut yourself a little slack if you need to. But I did want to make the point that these principles apply, whether we're talking dressed up, casual, or anywhere in between. Next, let's talk for a minute about rectangles. You'll remember that rectangles were equally wide in the hips and the shoulders, but more straight through the waist. Not perfectly straight. There typically is some contour in there. They also typically have narrower arms and legs. In general, because they tend to gain weight through the middle of the body, they don't tend to gain weight as readily in their limbs. They percentage-wise are somewhat more likely to be small busted. Again, that doesn't mean there can never be a rectangle with some va-va-voom going on. That can happen too, but most typically they're smaller busted. And this body type typically has a very flat derriere. All the straight body types, the rectangles, the inverted triangles, and the ovals, tend to carry the fullness of their behind actually sort of up high. For those of you who sew, this is what we refer to as a high hip alteration. Their fullness is a little further out toward the sides and up high toward their waist, where the curvy body types, the hourglasses and the triangles, carry their fullness much lower on their backside. So Carmen Diaz is a perfect example of a rectangular body shape. And can you see that when she does this high contrast wide belt across her middle, it's very straightening. When she does something that comes from her waist out into a flare, it adds a lot of visual bulk. Where on the other hand, when she does something that's a little more body skimming, especially with these radiating diagonal lines, or something where the not really waistline seam is up a little higher around her rib cage rather than hitting right at the waist, all of a sudden she gets a much more flattering and well-balanced proportion to her silhouette. So our goals for a rectangle are to create what my friend Pamela Leggett calls the essence of waist, which means it suggests an inward curve at the waistline based on the details of the garment, even if there is not one. And first cousin to that is the suggestion of a little outward curve over the hips. And then again, that vertical emphasis that elongates the silhouette. So asymmetrical lines, things with uneven hemlines, soft fabric that has some drape to it, adds the feeling of some curve and feminine softness to a straighter rectangular figure. Draped details are really flattering. Narrow sleeves, like a rectangle in a real boxy drop sleeve kind of thing is not going to be as enhanced as the same silhouette in a sleeve that's a little bit narrower. And then minimal shaping, maybe just the hint of a curve in at the waist, but not too much. If the garment is too curved through the waist, it'll pull in side to side wrinkles because there's not enough fabric to go around. So here you're getting that feeling of curve and softness from the cascade collar on that top. Here you're getting the softness from the fact that this tunic would be made in a very soft fabric, maybe a summer gauze kind of fabric, and it has deep slits at the side. So when she moves, it's going to move with her and have a little bit of float and motion that suggests softness and curve underneath. Here, although the garment itself is pretty straight along the side seams, this overlap detail with the curved edge suggests curves to her silhouette. And the same thing with this fun little top in the patchwork of different fabrics. The asymmetrical irregular hem suggests curve, and then the diagonal seaming of the patchwork also suggests curve. The one thing that makes me crazy about this picture is that I hate how the legs then get wider on those pants. Envision that with at least a straight leg and ideally something with a little bit of taper. And I think it would be an even more enhancing look for a rectangle body type, and for that matter, for almost anybody. Next, let's talk a little bit about triangles. Remember, this is a narrower upper body, a fuller hip and thigh. But the really important thing for triangles to remember is that they are a curvy figure. They do go in at the waist. All too often, triangles want to wear everything that just comes down and covers up their hips. And when they do that, they completely obscure that inward curve and bring a top down too far. So now they've chopped off their leg length, and it just does exactly the opposite of what they want it to do. Here's Jennifer Lopez, who is obviously world famous for her triangular figure. She's also pretty world famous for that particular dress, if you go back far enough to remember not only when she wore it, but then when Matt Lauer wore it as his Halloween costume on the Today Show. And then there was the whole question of who wore it better. But you can see that that completely straightens out her curves for those who were able to focus on the silhouette of the dress. And same thing here, it's not showcasing her curves at all. The woman has hips. She refuses to be embarrassed about that. She celebrates her curves. Now, none of us are likely to be able to manage a pair of jeans that rides that low, but can you see how even if they came up a whole lot higher, that her curve is showing, and that's what's so effective. And here you're seeing the same thing in this formal wear. It's contoured to her body. Yes, it shows that she has a full hip curve, and that's only a bad thing if you define it as a bad thing. And she doesn't, and she looks like $1,000,000. So good for her. The goal of triangles in general is to do the more interesting colors, textures, patterns, whatever, in the body, in the garment that's on her upper body, and to just stay more quiet, conservative, less detail, less fuss, a less enlarging color from the waist down. Somebody who talks about this stuff talks about having all the party upstairs. And remember to define that waistline. So for instance, I love to put triangle clients in shorter jackets that are fitted and end no more than a couple of inches below the waistline, because then all the attention goes up here when they're smaller, where they're smaller, and just kind of skims over their hip line anyway. Of course, that does presuppose that the lower body garment is properly fitted. And this is a challenge for triangle body types to get the size that fits their hips. It's probably going to be too big in the waist. I didn't intend to talk about that this evening, but I have just come across an absolutely amazing solution for all the fit issues that we have with lower body garments, pants in particular. And that is a brand new clothing line that I just last week agreed to represent, that makes pants and jeans according to body type. So they do one whole range of sizing that's built for a balanced hourglass figure, another whole range of sizing that's built for a figure with more fullness through the hips, and a third range of sizing that's built for gals who are straighter through the waist. And I just got I had done a pair of dress pants from them, and that's what got me interested in ever thinking about representing it. And then I got 2 pairs of jeans yesterday or the day before, and I'm like in heaven. They are the best fitting pants I have ever put on my body. So if you have challenges and want to know more about that, I'll be happy to talk with you about it on mine. Some more about techniques for balancing a lower body dominant figure. Obviously, brighter colors and more interesting details on the upper body, details that move our eye horizontally, like this collar or like these fold back lapels that visually add a little balancing volume to the upper body. Curved hemlines are magic for a taller look on anybody and for minimizing hips as well. If you look at this combination, you can see how, because this hemline is shaped, it gives us the feeling that her upper body goes from the bottom point of that jacket up to the top of her head, but her lower body goes from the higher point on her side seam down to her toes. And that means that these inches right in here get kind of visually counted twice. So she appears taller and sleeker. This is also an easier fit because the place where her body proportions vary from kind of standard hourglass shaped ready to wear is right about down here. Now the point of the jacket comes that far, but up here is where it has to fit around her body. And there's a whole lot less discrepancy between her measurements and an hourglass measurement up here at the high hip area. So that's a really sneaky little trick to think about. And then when she is choosing bottom garments, if she's buying ready to wear, and I have another image consultant friend who hates the term ready to wear. She says she just always talks with her clients in terms of ready to alter, because the idea that a standard garment is going to be a perfect fit for any one of us is pretty much fantasy land. But this fuller hipped or fuller thigh figure, so often I find wants to buy the one that fits her waist, but then it's miserably uncomfortable through the hips. If she buys the one that fits the hips, you can always have the waist altered and taken in. And one of the things that I hope that you'll take away from the whole ongoing experience of the community is that we all really, and I can't even believe I am saying this because I'm probably the worst offender ever, but we really need a whole lot fewer clothes than most of us have. If we only buy the right things and then they all go with each other, we can afford to invest the extra few dollars to have things tailored to fit us perfectly, because we're not buying 10 of them. So, end of that lecture. Inverted triangles are defined by a strong shoulder line, narrower hips, normally pretty thin arms and legs, and a tendency to gain weight through the middle body. Inverted triangles invariably complain about, oh, my shoulders. Oh, I look like a football player. Oh, this is so terrible. However, if they would look at any supermodel you will ever see in any magazine or any runway, they're always inverted triangles, because that shoulder line is just built for clothes to hang from. The rest of us who don't have that beautiful, strong shoulder line rely on removable foam shoulder shapers to produce it for us. So if you're one of the lucky ones with those great shoulders, please don't complain about them. It is a fitting challenge, no doubt about that, because again, you always have to buy for what I refer to as your critical fit zone, which means you buy for the biggest part of you and take it in from there. So our inverted triangle silhouette might need to buy her tops and shirts and t-shirts and jackets a little bit bigger to get the fit from the shoulders, and then have it tailored through the body, but it's going to look like $1,000,000. You'll notice, remember I said earlier that an inverted triangle was sort of an hourglass top on a rectangular body. Can you see that in this diagram? Can you see that inward curve from the top down, but then relatively straight through the hips? Naomi Campbell is my example of an inverted triangle. And here you're seeing those fabulous shoulders. And then who but an inverted triangle could possibly wear that multi-tiered skirt? But for her, it creates beautiful balance. Here she's just wearing a little sheath that skims her body, and she's had it tailored in through the hips so she doesn't have extra fabric just hanging out there. On the other hand, here they put her in this straight silhouette with these huge wide lapels that just further exaggerate her broader upper body. Now, there's not black piping around that lapel. I just photoshopped in lines because it tended to blur into itself in this photograph. But I think you can see how that is by no means the most flattering look for her. Also, can you see how bulky those sleeves are on her narrower arms? Really, really often when I have worked in clients for real live closets or help them evaluate jacket silhouettes in an online closet consultation, we'll realize that really, really often, especially when you get above about a ready-to-wear size 10 or a pattern size 12 to 14, the pattern makers overgrade the sleeves. So by the time you get the one that fits your body, it has these big bulky sleeves that just add bulk to your body silhouette, regardless of your body shape. So do take a look at sleeves, especially on jackets, but you'll see it in other garments as well. And if they are overly bulky and wide like this, your tailor can definitely taper them in a little narrower. And here's just another example of totally camouflaging her lovely body in clothes that don't fit. So the objective for an inverted triangle is to balance her upper and lower body, to do some sort of vertical detail on her upper body that sort of bisects that fullness. If you put her body in, let's say just a turtleneck over sweater, that's going to emphasize the side to side dimension. If it's a cardigan that she can wear open instead, now it's emphasizing the vertical dimension and causing that wider part of her to look narrower. If she happened to be in a situation where she really wanted that single overlayer sweater, an absolutely magic trick on this body type is a longer necklace that now gives you that same vertical line that an open cardigan might. She can tolerate a little bit of extra bulk through here to create the illusion of some fullness to her hips. And once again, long vertical lines that elongate and slim her silhouette. And here are some examples of silhouettes that could work well for this particular kind of body shape. So this body shape typically wants to emphasize her legs. So skinny pants can work. A skirt with a little flounce that the rest of us would probably not choose can be great for her because this body type invariably has just killer legs. This fitted jacket could be great for her, except do you see how it fits in and then flares out? And she doesn't flare out through the hips. So she might want to have that jacket. It's not flaring out here, but you know that it would, and might want to have it either tapered from the side seam or have this dart extended all the way to the bottom so there's not fullness that doesn't match her. And then our ovals, which are still balanced hips and shoulders, but more fullness through the waist, typically very full busted, a bit of a tummy, and also narrower limbs. Melissa McCartney is our example. And oh my goodness, the difference between how she looks in wrong choices and right ones is just astonishing. This one I thought was especially interesting because in general, we talk about avoiding high shine fabric if you want to reduce body bulk. But there's so many yeah buts in all of this. And the yeah but about that one is that the garment is full enough that it hangs in soft vertical folds. So do you see how you get light, dark, light, dark, light, dark bouncing off of that shine? And it's creating all kinds of vertical emphasis in the lower part of that garment. Same thing here, wearing that jacket open a little bit gives her a lot of vertical emphasis. So our objective is to, particularly through the torso, to slenderize and elongate. And this body type, more than any other, really wants a little extra shoulder support to square off that shoulder line and to avoid any shortening horizontal details whenever possible. So here we get a little extra strength to the shoulder from that cap sleeve. Do you see how your eye doesn't stop here, but goes from sleeve edge to sleeve edge across her shoulder? The yoke detail is high enough that it's not putting a horizontal across the fullest part of her body. And then this fullness is giving her room to camouflage a little bit of tummy without looking like camouflage. Here's a similar detail. The asymmetrical line deflects our eye from looking at fullness. This interesting button, and I'd like it better if this yoke seam was even a little more lifted toward the shoulder, but at least it gives you a good idea about that. Now, this one I included because this this contrasting band down the front is another really strong vertical line on her upper body, which is wonderful. Couple of things that don't work so well about this. Number one is the contrasting horizontal bands, which pull your eye side to side right through the fullest part of her body. And the fact that she desperately needs that shoulder line more defined. This is a drop shoulder garment, and that drop shoulder detail is really almost never flattering. You have to really be very tall and willowy for that to work very well at all. I mean, it particularly wouldn't work very well on an oval body shape. But this center front band thing would be terrific. Now, there's lots more to say about all of these body types. We have created groups for each different body type. So once you're solidly confident about which one you are, you will want to sign up for that group, and then you'll be in a situation to chit chat and share recommendations and accessory tricks and great pattern choices and great retail finds for the body type that you are. If you happen to own my book, Looking Good Every Day, there's discussion about styles for each body type on pages 59 through 64. If you don't happen to have a copy of that and you are interested in having one, obviously it's available on my website, and as a member of the Looking Good Together community, you get a 20% discount on the book. There's a place when you check out that you can put your discount code, and the discount code for that 20% off is LGED, which is just the initials of the title of the book: L for looking, G for good, E for every, and D for day. In addition, because when we created the Looking Good book, we were trying to touch on every different aspect of wardrobing, we didn't have the space to go into every bit of nitty gritty, tiny detail about what works best on each body type. And because of that, I created a series of 40-page ebooks, one for each body type. Those are available for purchase on my website. And once again, as a member of the community, there's a discount code. The code is the word half. And that takes $20 off of those booklets, or $39. But for being part of the community, if that's something that you want to add to your arsenal, that's a 50% discount for you. And in future months' master classes, we will talk about vertical body types and how to find that balance of proportions. And we'll do a whole session on tips that help you look taller and sleeker, regardless of your body type. But our immediate assignment for now is to get into your skivvies or whatever, take a really objective look in the mirror and determine which body type is the best description for you. If you need my help with that, by all means, shoot me an email with pictures attached, and I'll be happy to reply with my 2 cents worth on the subject. And then you'll want to join the discussion group. The same tips that we talked about in the session this evening, plus some more examples, are already posted now to those various groups. And we'll be well on our way to helping you figure out exactly what styles are going to be the most effective to showcase your body. Let me stop